Yeah. When you're looking at it on paper, it's one of those things as an astrologer that you're like, wow, what is this really going to look like in real life? He's the awakener, shakes things awake sort of abruptly, suddenly, shockingly. That's the energy of Uranus. It's very revolutionary. I feel like we're also spiraling up and evolving to another level too. I was given the image years ago of Christmas tree lights, strands of lights, how one bulb can control the whole strand. So I feel like there's enough of us bulbs lighting up these other strands of the grid.
For some of us, we have that feeling inside of us that something is like upgrading here, like something is just not the same, and it's in a good way.
When they decoded the numerical sequence of DNA, decoded it, changed it to the numerical value to a letter, and then it spelled out God.
Welcome to the Sleeping Lotus Podcast, the sacred space where we explore the human spirit's true potential and awaken to our soul remembrance one petal at a time. Whether you're wide awake, half asleep, or somewhere in between, this is a circle where nothing is too mystical, too messy, or too much. Each week, we'll gather around the stories that shaped us, the breakdowns and the breakthroughs that opened us up to divine moments that helped us remember who we really are. We'll be joined by guests who've lived through the darkness and found the sacred woven within it. This isn't just a podcast. It's a remembering, a return, a place to rest and awaken. So pour some tea, light a candle, or just breathe with us. Let the lotus within you open in its own time, in its own way. So thank you for tuning in, and let's begin. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode of the Sleeping Lotus Podcast. I'm Laura Jean.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we're your hosts. And today we have a returning guest. This is Christina Celona. She is an astrologer and the owner of the New Earth Harmony. And she also has a bi-weekly newsletter called Tales of Lunacy, which I definitely recommend you checking out. I know that I read it and find some really good nuggets of information there that give me some peace of mind when I'm feeling like things are going a little bit crazy. And to talk about things that are a little crazy, the last time we spoke, we touched upon going from the Chinese Year of the Snake to the Fire Horse, and that this is all happening on the same day as the Chinese New Year and also like the solar eclipse. So Christina, if you want to kind of like give a little bit of summary of what that energy sort of creates. And I know that the planets are sort of moving into these positions at the same time as well that we haven't seen maybe in our whole entire lifetime. So let's catch our viewers up on some of that energy if you can.
Okay, well, hey, it's nice to be back. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, we have so much astrology happening now. We do have on the 17th, we'll have the solar eclipse that coincides with the fire horse. And eclipses are a big deal in astrology anyway. They really accelerate time. They sort of close doors, open new ones. They change your trajectory. There's a lot of sudden endings, new beginnings that happen all in a very compressed amount of time with eclipses. They could be game changers, and especially if they hit something in your personal chart, then it affects you more than maybe someone that it doesn't fall, on a planet or something. The fact that a solar eclipse coincides with the Chinese New Year is pretty remarkable in and of itself. That's not something that happens often. And the Chinese horse, the fire horse, that's also an energy of acceleration. So it's like really doubling down. The universe is doubling down on this accelerated type of energy. So, I've heard people recently, saying like this isn't moving, that's not moving. They were frustrated. They have to keep going back and forth to get something right. I'm like, don't worry, because things are going to really take off. I feel like once we hit this eclipse on the 17th of February, that's really like the ignition point of 2026. And then 2026 is super accelerated energies.
Mm.
um 2026 seems to be very different type of year, type of energies than we've experienced in a really long time, especially in the last several years. It's definitely not more of the same. It's not a continuation. It is brand new energy for a couple different reasons.
Mm.
2026 is a year number one in numerology. So that's a new beginning, new starts, new paths, new leadership, new discoveries, things like that. And then on top of it, we have this solar eclipse, and then we have the fire horse energy. So 2026 really starts to take off out of the gate once we get past this eclipse. Um, that being said, this eclipse energy's got some very chaotic and unsettling energies attached to it. So, one of the things I always tell people during eclipse, what we call it the eclipse portal, it's about like a 2 week period because eclipses come in pairs. We have a solar eclipse, which is like a super amped up new moon. And then we have a lunar eclipse, which is a super amped up full moon. Okay, so that's what they are. They come in pairs. Um, this particular eclipse is really amped up. Uranus is squaring it. Uranus is like an awakener. It's unsettling energy. It is a disruption. It's a disruptive influence, really. So kind of like shakes things loose, anything that's been stuck, anything, yeah, it's just gonna kick it loose. So just be
Now,
prepared for that.
You seem very sure about that.
What's that?
You seem very sure about that. Smiling, and you took a breath and you were like, okay, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. When you're looking at it on paper, it's one of those things as an astrologer that you're like, wow, what is this really going to look like in real life? You
Mm,
know?
mhm,
so
And of course, everybody's experiences a little bit differently.
mhm.
If it
sure.
affects something in your personal chart, obviously, it'll be a little bit more ramped up, or
Right.
maybe, it doesn't hit anything in your chart and you're just witnessing everybody around you be affected and you're somewhat unscathed.
Yeah. I know maybe next time I'll pull out my chart that I got when I participated in your class and I'll have to say where something is and you'll give a little insight into what's going on with that eclipse energy. But I
Yeah.
I also saw now a lot more people are aware of like Mercury retrograde and kind of like this belief of electronics going haywire and things like that. And I noticed, and I'm a little bit more in tune with this because I'm traveling during this whole eclipse season exactly on the day I'm traveling. And then I come back maybe like a day before Mercury retrograde or something like that. So I'm kind of curious because I don't think we touched on any of that on the last video. How would a Mercury retrograde act with these energies?
Mm.
Well, Mercury retrograde, he goes retrograde like later this month. I want to say on the 26th. I'm not
Somewhere,
exactly sure
yeah,
off the
somewhere
top of
around
my
there.
head the date, but there's also the shadow period. So he kind of
Mhm.
enters his shadow period a little bit before the actual retrograde date. And what that means is the shadow period is the days that he repeats or retraces his steps through the different degrees of the zodiac. That's what the shadow phase is. So once he hits those degrees. Um, but a Mercury retrograde and traveling, like I never say to people, I'm not one of those astrologers that is like, oh my God, like just stay in bed with your head under the covers
No,
once in a
never.
while,
No,
you
you
know,
can't. You got to live, you know?
once in a while, when things are
You'll let
super
us know
crazy.
though if we do need to like hide in bed under the covers, right? You'll let us know ahead of time.
Right.
But like Mercury retrograde, Mercury is the messenger of the gods in astrology or in Greek mythology. And then he's the messenger in astrology. So he's in charge of communication and transportation and comings and goings and things like that. So there are the things that sort of get wonky during a Mercury retrograde phase. One of the things I like to say though is like the universe isn't playing gotcha. It's not like, aha, let me mess up all their plans, ha, 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 for 3 weeks, 4 times a year. Um, it's really a time to, I always say, like, don't begin anything new during a Mercury retrograde.
Hmm.
It's a time really to revisit,
Reflect.
reflect, review, not start anything new.
So,
Revise.
so how does that interact with so we first have the solar eclipse and then we have the lunar eclipse. Does that energy like react to the lunar eclipse?
Well, it definitely plays a role,
Yeah.
Mercury retrograde. So there'll be, I think, during this retrograde phase, a lot of Mercury retrograde is always sort of going back to something, or any planet retrograde for that matter, is about returning, retracing your steps, going back to something.
Mm,
Mercury retrograde is just the one of the most known because he's one of the faster moving planets and it's what's considered a personal planet. So it affects us a little bit more. It's a little bit more noticeable in our day to day lives for that 3 week period, when electronics go wonky, when you're like, whoops, I sent that email to the wrong person, or, oh, that text didn't go through. I thought it did, or, things like that happen. Um, I also always recommend during a Mercury retrograde, don't don't enter into new contracts or agreements. Don't sign paperwork. Don't buy a new car or a new appliance or anything with moving parts. I can't even tell you how many times I have seen it. Um, say on social media or something when someone's like, check out my new ride. And all I'm thinking to myself is, man, it's Mercury retrograde. That ain't gonna work out right.
oh
And
no.
then, 6 months later, they're always complaining, it's a lemon, this happened, that happened. I mean, I've seen it countless times.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes life happens and your washing machine breaks and you need to buy a new one during
Mm-hmm.
Mercury retrograde. You know what I mean? It is what it is, and life
Right.
must go on.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you're just inconvenienced. I
So
remember.
it's a good idea to know when these retrogrades are taking place and kind of mark your calendar, and that way
Hmm.
it's
Absolutely.
not such a
I
shock.
And
I totally live my life that way, you
similar
know.
to plotting the lunar cycle, as you were saying, I think in the last episode, is what you also teach, is that if we can be aware of these things, we can sort of even give ourselves some like a little bit more rest during certain times of that cycle as well. Um, I mean, women, I think if women were more in tune with our cycles, that we would be able to do that, not necessarily with how the world works, but if we were just a bit more in tune with it and able to give ourselves some grace because of it, it would be that much beneficial. And I think that's how I kind of see this, is if we sort of understood these energies a bit more, is we could give ourselves some grace during some of it.
Absolutely. Like you're saying, you're going to travel during this time, right? So, like I said, life goes on, and this might be a really like mind blowing type of experience, and maybe it's not such a restful trip,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's more exciting, and I'm meeting these new people, or I learned
Yes.
these new things that I never had any idea about,
Mhm.
and it's exciting in that way and rattles you in that way, sort of like shakes up your life or belief systems or whatever it may be. So what I'm saying is when I say it's accelerated and it's, there's disruption and everything, it's not necessarily all negative either.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there seems to be a bit of a wake up call and something sort of shakes loose during this particular eclipse. And then when we add Mercury retrograde in the eclipse portal, because we'll have the solar eclipse coinciding with the Chinese fire horse on the 17th, then we'll have the lunar eclipse on March 3rd, and sandwiched in between that, Mercury goes retrograde on the 26th. So I feel like that's going to be a lot of review time. And Mercury's retrograding in the sign of Pisces. It's not his favorite place to be.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about Mercury, he's very analytical and factual and rules over communication and transportation. In Pisces, Pisces is more imaginative and doesn't have the clarity, so there could be some confusion with things. So I would suggest, if you're away, or to anybody, even if you're just living your normal life, and you have to do stuff, double check your appointments, double check if, did that email get sent, or, but I feel like there's going to be, with this particular retrograde, it is going to be, to me, like reflective on old memories, old conversations, different things like that coming to the fore, to be reviewed and maybe look at them differently
Mm-hmm.
after that retrograde is over. One of the things with Mercury in Pisces, like I said, it's not his favorite sign. So somebody, that's a type of energy. Like I said, there's some clarity is lacking. There could be confusion, there could be misunderstandings in paperwork, mistakes, errors, omissions, things like that. um if you're traveling, you want to make sure, did you get your directions right? Are you going to the right place? Is the car coming, or whatever. So I feel like Mercury and Pisces, though, can be very telepathic and imaginative, though,
Mm-hmm.
can be able to communicate, or communications come, and those of us that are already sort of psychic or sensitive or whatever, it's like that's sort of the communication that comes in images and feelings more so than words.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so I think there's like that sort of thing with Mercury and Pisces, and then especially retrograde, it's like going over old memories, old conversations, and things like that, reflecting and reviewing on that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've always found that in the past, I usually had that clarity at the end of the Mercury retrograde. And even if I wasn't like in tune that it was happening, it was like, what's going on? And then an astrology thing would pop up and I'd be like, oh,
Right.
and,
So you don't
and
have to necessarily know it to believe it,
yeah.
Mhm.
but once you start to connect and be in tune with it, it makes so much more sense.
Yeah, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing the patterns if you go back and you look at these cycles and what was going on in your life at that time, and you start to see that there is a connection to the energies that are shifting and moving around you, and how it is affecting where you are on, in your life. So then you kind of pay attention now to what's coming down the road, knowing that it is going to affect you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm big on journaling. And that's one of the main parts of Lunar Living, my group coaching, where we manifest and empower by the moon cycles and everything. And one of the things with that is because it's easy enough that anybody can do that, and you don't need to know a whole lot of astrology or anything like that. The moon moves pretty quickly around the zodiac. It's 1 month, it's a monthly
Mhm.
cycle. And so wherever it's falling in your chart for the new moon, that's where the new cycle begins in your chart. So whatever area of life it's in, if it's in your income sector, if it's in your education and travel sector, if it's in your relationship sector, that's where the focus is going to be for that month. And even
Mhm.
though there could be all this other stuff happening in your life, you at least know this is where the major focus is, and this is where the major action is for this cycle. This is where I can at least, sort of, for lack of a better term, like find the soft spot or the sweet spot, that it's like, okay, well, I can focus here and I don't need to be it's one of the things I talk about, like planting out of season.
Mm.
We all have our human agendas and goals and timelines and schedules. So we want it how we want it, but the universe doesn't really operate like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you at least know where certain energies are congregating and activating, what area of your life they're activating, then you know to focus there. You're not going to be like, well, you know, I want to start a new relationship, or I want to, look for somebody. I'm ready for that now. When you're having like a third house lunation, and it's like, well, this is more about like communication, and you know what I mean? It's just like, it's not really the time where that's going to happen. Maybe you can put start being more social then, and hope to meet somebody by the time it gets to the right spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. And then you get to
And like I
focus
said,
on
once
those.
you follow it, the people that have been with me over the years, so they have enough like journaling behind them to be like, oh, okay, well, last time we had a new moon in Aquarius, this, and this took place. I
Mm.
may have been trying to, and
Mm-hmm.
I always say, you might be trying to manifest, you know, X, Y, and Z. Put that down, but also throughout the month, journal the things that are actually happening, besides what you're trying to manifest. See what else
Mm-hmm.
comes up that falls under this umbrella, because that's going to give you clues as to how these cycles manifest for you in your personal journey.
Mm-hmm. And then you can focus your attention on those areas and not be so distracted by everything
Exactly.
else that's going on around you. And that's for self-improvement too,
Mm-hmm.
because we're here to evolve. So if you have an idea when these cycles show up, and this is where your attention is being pulled to, and it can be for many reasons. It could be self-healing or things that maybe we're we're not paying attention to. And doesn't the universe have a way of bringing those very same situations back into our life if we're not addressing them when they're there?
Oh, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
I'm convinced the universe definitely has a sense of humor, and usually
Mm.
like the joke's on you. You're like, got you.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Should have paid attention, and you didn't.
So here it is again.
Right.
Yep. We're
Yep.
going to circle back around and see
Mhm.
if you see it with more clarity this time.
Yep. And one way or another, you're going to work through this. And you do realize that once you've reached that completion, that stage now is done, you can kind of close the door to it, or it's the end of a chapter. Then you move on, and the next cycle, you're kind of a little more free. There's some space here, some wiggle room, so your focus can be, you put your attention towards whatever's being shown to you at that time. I think you get the warnings
Speaking of
too.
the end of a chapter, that's really what we're experiencing now. It's really like the end of an era,
Mm-hmm.
with all this astrology stuff that's happening.
Yeah, you said that basically, like, all that has happened within the last 9 years. It's like that's all going out of here.
yeah. When we come to the solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th, and that begins the fire horse year, but that also ends the year of the snake. And we've been ending that whole 9 year cycle. 2026 is a one in numerology. So it is a new start. And the new start really kicks into gear with this eclipse. And not only is it just a lunar eclipse, but we have so many of the outer planets changing sign. Today, for instance, Saturn moves into Aries. That's like a 30-year cycle. Now we had a little bit of a sneak preview last spring for a couple of months. Saturn moved into Aries for a couple months, and then it retrograded back into Pisces. But today it moves into Aries, and it'll be there for like the next 2.5 years. So it's a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. Neptune at the end of January just moved into Aries. That's a really big deal. And it'll be in Aries for the next 14 years. It spent 14 years in Pisces. So these are long generational cycles. They make an impact. Being that they went from Pisces to Aries, Pisces the last sign of the zodiac, and Aries is the very start. So
Mm,
it's not just changing sign, it's starting a whole new astrological cycle.
Mm-hmm.
right.
And they're both meeting um at well, they're already at 0 degrees, but they come to the exact degree and minute February 20th. um I think the last time they were in an exact conjunction, it wasn't in Aries and not at 0 degrees, which is a major point in and of itself. This is the beginning of the zodiac. It's like birth. It's birthing something new. And like I said, these are generational shifts. Beginning of the zodiac, the 0 degrees Aries point is also referred to as the world axis. So it really is something like a globally reaching type of energy. But I think the last time that they made a conjunction was like 89 when the Berlin Wall fell. So,
Mm,
they coincide with big happenings, big
Mm-hmm.
energetic happenings. And I feel like, as I think I mentioned this in the last show we did, we had Pluto through Capricorn for like 16 years, from 2008 to 2024. And that sort of unearthed a lot of corruption, tore down. It was like the takedown and unraveling and collapsing of all these systems and structures. And I was talking about this for years,
Mm-hmm.
and the last few years, it was like undeniable. It was like, oh yeah, this is like happening, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel like with Saturn moving into 0 degrees Aries, this is like new leadership, new authority, building new systems. And I feel like even with Neptune and Saturn together, they're two very different energies. Saturn's very hierarchical, structured, rules, things like that, while Neptune is dissolving and it's like ethereal, it's sort of like unreal, immaterial, and Saturn's very material. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Neptune's very spiritual. So I feel like these new systems need to integrate spirit in them. Like I feel like all of our old systems, remember how I was saying before, like even as a little child, it was kind of evident to me that like a lot of the way that our world works seemed to not be beneficial for us. Like the
Mm-hmm.
systems in place didn't make sense to me. It felt like it went against our grain in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel like the new system, like we're into this whole new paradigm is beginning. It's like one is
yeah.
ending and a new one is beginning. And it's really evidenced in all these outer planets moving into new territory. They're all going to be working together pretty harmoniously throughout 2026. So I feel like we get to see what comes next. We get to build
Mm-hmm.
what comes
Mm.
next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was
And
just thinking if it's like, as above, so below kind of a thing. It's
absolutely.
like, okay, we're all being pushed right now to decide if we're going to work together or if we're going to continue the divide. So, that's
Interesting
I'll be
time.
honest, there's some people that haven't gotten it yet, but I feel like they will. And I feel
mhm,
like we're probably not as divided as talking heads would like us to believe we are. And they
Absolutely.
paint a
Yeah.
certain picture.
Hmm.
They need to because perception creates reality. So if
Hmm.
they project that perception onto us, then that's, what they want us to create for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they
And
want us to believe too.
even the division has its own purpose. Some of the people are being activated to really pursue their passions, and that might be being an advocate for people in a certain system. So I think everything has its place, even when it seems it's a bit negative and destructive. And like you said, things don't also like they're not as they seem as well. So
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point, that people are activated. And I think sometimes being triggered in a negative way sort of does activate people, you
absolutely.
know.
Hmm.
Um, Even in astrology, a square, which is in traditional astrology, would be considered more negative. I don't view it that way. I view it as more activating, where a trine in astrology is a more harmonious and flowing angle, but it kind of keeps you a little bit complacent, because things flow so easily.
Hmm.
So sometimes you need that friction to just get going.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. You need your cage rattled a bit.
Yeah. And I feel like this eclipse is definitely going to be a bit of a cage rattler, um, specifically um, on the larger scale in the collective arena. I feel like it hits the US charts moon, which represents the people, the populace, the collective. And I think there's a bit of a shakeup and a wake up call to the Americans
Mm.
Mm.
on some level.
Mm.
So
Um,
you're saying the alignment itself literally falls over us, the US.
yeah, so this eclipse falls at what is it, 28 degrees, 49 minutes Aquarius. And I think off the top of my head, I think the moon in the US chart is at 27 degrees. So it's very close to it.
Mm.
It's close enough to make quite an impact. And then we have Uranus also making a harsh alignment to it. And Uranus just really, he's the awakener, shakes things awake sort of abruptly,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, shockingly. That's the energy of Uranus. It's very
Oh,
revolutionary. And
like
it
the
makes
tower card,
sense.
the tower card in
Yes,
tarot.
yes.
That's
As
what
I
that
wrote in
reminds
my
me of.
blog, it's like a tower moment.
Yeah.
And we are coming up on this tower moment, coinciding with the Chinese fire horse, which
Mm.
is really acceleration, freedom, movement. So anybody that's thinking like nothing's moving along fast enough, just wait, because it's not much longer. It's
Mm.
really not.
I mean, I think when we were talking before this episode, Stephanie and I were kind of in the agreement where it was almost like you had made this comparison to wanting to see the credits roll at the end of the film, the movie or whatever. And that's what it makes me think of is like, all right, like let's get to the credits kind of a
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
Well, I think, like I said, this is more of like an ignition period. So maybe it's the climax in the plot, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
before it's like, and I feel like it's gonna be like ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, and there's gonna be a succession
Mm,
of um awakening moments.
sure.
I've been hearing that a lot too.
And
Oh yeah.
I've heard a lot
Hmm.
about 2026 and 2027 being the like that type of energy in terms of things shifting and changing and all of that
Yeah.
and unknown, like we're in unknown territory here.
We really are. as I said, it's a year number one in numerology. So it's all new starts. It's a seeding point. It's not the end of something,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I started this and let me see how that goes. And then on top of that, we have all these outer planets that are shifting into new signs. Um, like I said, the end of January, we had Neptune move into Aries. Now, Neptune hasn't been in Aries. It's like a 165-year cycle, so never in our lifetime.
Mm.
It's really, and then Saturn's moving in there today. That's like a 30-year cycle. Pluto last year moved into Aquarius, and he's still in the early degrees. He's at like 3, maybe 4 degrees. So still very, very new energy there. And when you think about it, in the chart of the US, Pluto was at like the late degrees of Capricorn. We had our Pluto return, I want to say like 2020, 22-ish, maybe. But that's when our country was founded. Once, a couple years after that, that's when all like the real revolution really was. Pluto was in Aquarius. And not only do we have the American Revolution, the French Revolution coincided with that too. So we see like this is in the air. You look all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You look at
absolutely.
like Iran, or you look at Venezuela, or you look at all these different places. Everybody's feeling it. There's something, it's undeniable. There's
Brewing.
something in the air. There's
Absolutely, yeah.
something brewing. And, we were just saying it before we got on here, like those of us that are sensitive to energies and stuff, like you feel it, like you feel like something's about to pop off.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to, I'm not a doomer at all, but it is, depending on where you're at and how you view things and how you feel about things, it could be really exciting or it could be really like unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Christina, I've known you for a long time. I trust you. And when you say buckle up, I hope the viewers take you seriously and buckle up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they'll probably see this episode a little after the fact, but they'll at least be able to look at it and be like, "Oh my, that's what was going on,"
Yeah,
you
reflect.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's okay because that'll bring their attention and more to pay that will grab their awareness to pay more attention to things, these cycles that are happening in their own personal life too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this particular eclipse, like I said in my blog post, I feel like it could bring a few different things, unsettling wise. Like it could be in banking and markets and economies and currencies and things like that. It could be a disruption to like networks, internet, electricity. That's all Uranus ruled stuff. It could be weather anomalies or sky events.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Oh,
and we know too, like there's a lot of shifting in industries with AI and all of this. We have a close friend that we know that, just shared with us that it's shifting in his industry, and there's, some unknown things and stuff there too. So there's definitely a lot of changes, and I hope that through perhaps some of this eclipse energy and Mercury retrograde, and like you were saying, they might see this episode afterwards, that maybe they're a little bit more to a place where psychologically they're a bit more flexible. From a psychology standpoint, the more flexible we can be as human beings, the like I don't want to say more stable, but the more that we can kind of keep this equilibrium when things do are become unexpected and maybe scare us a bit or just take us into the unknown. So hopefully it's just like a really good teaching moment for people to then, like ease into the spring and the summer when people tend to gather more and get together, and maybe they'll come together with new thoughts and ideas and things like that. That would be, amazing to see people do that. And I shared in the last episode, I'm coming across people that are coming with solutions versus coming with the doomsday and the drama and all this other stuff that tends to not get us kind of in the direction that we need to go.
Yeah, I say, I feel like don't focus on what is falling away because it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if people, some people are used to certain things and a certain way of life and things operate along a certain trajectory, um, don't like white knuckle hold on to things
Yeah.
that no longer serve. They're no longer viable. They're no longer sustainable. Focus more on what we want to create.
And
And I feel like we have that opportunity.
yeah, and sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I
No, you're
just
fine.
wanted to get on that point as like Americans, we do kind of have this level of comfort in in a way of how the society has moved. And so the idea that it could shift and change and all of that is a
And
big
shatter.
and shatter is a big shakeup. It is a big moment in our time in our history.
Mm-hmm. Something that's probably
Yeah.
never been experienced on this planet before now.
Well, like I said, with all of these planets, these outer planets shifting into new territory, all in a relatively short succession of time, um, it's kind of an unprecedented thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's a time in history, looking back at astrology transits, if this ever all happened at one time. But the good thing is that they'll all be cooperating planets, cooperating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I see it as like they're weaving this new tapestry for our new paradigm,
I like that.
because once we get into the spring, then even Uranus moves out of Taurus and into Gemini. And that's what I thought when you said about being flexible. That's definitely an energy of changeability and flexibility
Mm-hmm.
and all seeing different viewpoints and learning different things and even like new discoveries and shocking information um and I talked about it a bit in my year ahead video, and we can maybe get into that another time, but yeah, all of these planets are going to be, like I said, working harmoniously together to build and shape and weave in this new paradigm tapestry. So I feel kind of excited about it. You know, those of us on the awakening path, over the years, we've probably had our time to grieve certain things that were like, oh, this meant something to me, but it really wasn't what I thought it was,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and those moments of like, damn, I missed that, but it really wasn't ever what I thought it was anyway.
Yeah,
So I feel like some people are going to still need that grieving space.
absolutely. That's a really important point. Um, and I
Yeah,
feel
because
that
nobody talks
too.
about that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because with change, like we were just saying, like we're used to this certain kind of way of moving about in society with friendships, with family members and things like that. And it's kind of feels almost like a ping pong um game a little bit of like everyone's going to hit a certain point differently and go possibly in a different direction, and that's going to bring a bit of grief because you might have imagined that you would have had these family experience or relationship experiences and they're not quite going the way that you thought they were going. And I can personally say that I have experienced that myself, you know? Um, and then it's painful, but it's also kind of like you said, there's that excitement of like, oh, what can I create with this?
Yeah, and that I think is part of it on the awakening path too, is you're shedding so many skins that
Mm-hmm.
you're really not who you used to be. So a lot of the things, places, people, whatever that you used to do or like used to want to kick with, it's not a vibrational match anymore. And though maybe you recognize that or maybe you don't, but either way, even if you do recognize it, there is like that little bit
Mm-hmm.
of heartbreak or a lot of bit of heartbreak,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to let it go. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't what it
Absolutely.
was. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing you could do about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just kind of like grieve it and,
Yeah.
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 you know,
You
maybe I'll
do.
catch you on the flip side. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You never know, but that is a part of the shifting, when the energies and um, the way everything is lining up right now to pull all these energies in, or the energies that are exiting out, and then it's trickling down into everyone's personal life. So they're having their own, could be a crisis, during this time, could be a loss. There could be some old matters that are brought up to the surface that they need to process through. So again, there's a gamut of emotions taking place on top of the energy that's already moving and swirling and shifting and changing. So the calling may be for those people to exit out of your experience. Could be temporary, could be permanent.
Right.
They need to follow through, pay attention, and go work on their own stuff, and prepare for what's coming for them down the road. So maybe it's not a finale, a final moment. It's not something that you have to think about now and worry about if this should happen. I think if you just focus on yourself, um, taking care of yourself, and paying attention to what you need to pay attention to, and just trusting that everyone is moving in the direction they need to. You never know what's going to happen down the road. So I think right now, just focusing on yourself, and doing the healing work that needs to be done, and understanding that, yes, there are other people that are going to be shifting in their life. Doesn't mean that you've done something wrong, or even that they've done something wrong. It's just their calling is in a different direction right now, which makes sense considering the amount of shifting that's going on just within the planet, not to mention
Yep.
what's happening on our planet. And then we have our own personal life too that we're working on. So this is a lot to unpack. Now and I think taking that quiet time to kind of sort through all of this, not just in a day or a week, but this could take weeks, it could take months, and don't rush through this. Take the time that you need and heal through it, because you definitely do not want to bring this old baggage into this new year, this new energy. I think there's
You
going to be
really
enough
almost
here to
can't.
keep you busy. Yeah. Yeah. There's no room for
It's
it.
really like, that ends here, and you can't cross this threshold bringing all this old stuff. That's why even in my personal life, I haven't really like started anything new. I
Right.
was just like, let me just,
Mm-hmm.
deal
Tidy
with
up
what
the
I'm
ends.
dealing with. What was that?
Tidy up the ends here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tidy up.
Um, and I kind of was even thinking it here in New Jersey on the East Coast. It's just been so bitter cold for
Mhm.
weeks, and we've had ice and snow for weeks. It hasn't melted, it hasn't gone away. It's very unusual. I've never seen anything like it really. But it reminded me of like, yeah, this is like the last couple of weeks of the snake year, right? There's nothing more you can do. You have to
Mm-hmm.
just kind of hunker down, stay warm, survive, maybe marinate in your own little whatever. Maybe, yeah, maybe you could clear out a closet or a cabinet or, things like that. But it's been very much like shed, 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 and I felt like this deep freeze reminded me of that too. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
even the weather feels like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, being hunkered down, stuck inside, perhaps. Maybe you're looking at a home that's not quite organized the way that you'd like it to be, and it feels, disruptive to your energy. And it's like, okay, when this freezes, up, it's time to start moving a bit, start getting in alignment with yourself.
Yeah, and I just feel like a lot of the old stuff can't come, cross this threshold because I feel like if you do bring it, like you're just, dragging something behind you, it's not only going to hold you back, I think it's going to really like steal your joy,
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
it's going to be so
absolutely.
uncomfortable like that you're going to have to do something about it, whatever it
Mhm.
is for each individual.
Yeah, and when you're getting that feeling of, oof, I think I need to kind of go through my life, my home, maybe your career, maybe family, friends, and there's some changes that need to be made. Maybe there's some purging that needs to take place, and then cleansing, working on yourself, cleaning house, get your house ready. There's a lot that you can do. I think maybe people don't realize or don't think that it's going to matter, but it does matter. I mean, this is old stagnant
Absolutely
energy.
matters.
Clean up the house, sage the house. I've How many clients have I said this to these past couple of months? Moving into the new year, are you getting that feeling that you need to clean house, that you need to maybe purge or rearrange, look into some feng shui, or do a saging, or place your bowl, your crystal bowl in the center of the room? And I love my salt lamps. I think I have a salt lamp in every room, and the bathroom too. Yes, I do. And have your salt lamps. Like, it helps absorb and remove a lot of this energy that maybe you're feeling in the house, and the saging does help a lot too. So I think if if you don't know, you can ask. And there's a lot of resources out there. And if you're still not sure of it, then maybe talk to people that you do know, and feel more comfortable with them, and then maybe they can give you some guidance too. There are things that we can do to
Oh yeah,
prepare.
absolutely. And like I said, I feel like this is the time, all this inner shedding because everything is going to really ignite so quickly that I feel like you're not going to have the chance.
Mm-hmm.
You've already had the chance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm wondering too, thinking of some of my clients, some of the situations that they're in, recently. I'm wondering if this may be their cage being rattled, and they're meant to pay attention to certain things. Could be career wise. That seems to be a really big deal right now. Maybe they're being asked, is this where you want to be? Because where we're going, this may not be the place for you. So if you do notice a shakeup in here, I probably would pay attention to that, because that may be the universe's way of saying, hey, you might want to put some attention on this, and figure this out before we move forward, especially if it's very like in your face, like you can't deny it and you can't walk away from it. I mean, I think a
Eclipse
lot of.
energy is very much in your face. Like I said, particularly if it's highlighting, a personal planet or angle in one's own chart. You'll definitely see shifts in career. People move, divorce, get
Mm-hmm.
married. There's bigger events, that kind of take place. And it might be, I always say it could be one certain event, or it could be like a series of smaller events that sort of like shift your path, like this comedy of errors or something, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, this led to this, led to this, led to this, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm here, but I was all the way over there before. And then all these things happen, and that totally changed what I was doing. That's
Right.
like eclipse energy.
Mm.
Hmm. Now, does there tend to be like a seasonal eclipse energy? So, like the eclipse now, per se, does that come with something different than the eclipse that might happen over the summer or whenever the next one is? I think it's the summer, right?
So they're related, but they're their own eclipse.
Okay.
So they come in families and pairs with certain themes running throughout, but they are their own events, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Deep breath.
Right, right. Now, so compared to the 1 year, the 1 year is like new beginning, like you're saying. Um, and we're in this like territory where we're unknown. What, not to like jump ahead here to the end of the year, but like, what could we kind of see maybe even like mid-year that starts to shift and things are moving towards the two, but yet we're still kind of in the one? Like if people just kind of want, like obviously we can't give them predictions without being psychic, a little, like actually giving them a reading. And even then, there's there's free will and things like that. But if people are sort of like, well, okay, I'm going to do this work now, um, what might have a little bit of an insight into towards the end, like towards the end of the year?
Well, I would say the 2 months of this year that stand out, well, 3 months that stand out to me, February being one of them, April is another big month, and then July. July
Mm.
is very like,
Oh boy, that's my month.
I'm April.
Oh, all right, Steph. We might
Mm-hmm.
have to prepare ourselves for a little bit of like extra R&R.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
yeah. And like I said, around eclipse time, I always tell people give yourself some space and some grace because there are so many variables. There are so many things that could change on a dime. So you don't want to be bogged down, with this like tight fixed schedule where you think everything has to run along a certain
Mm-hmm.
course
Mm-hmm.
because most often it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
and there's these little things that get thrown into the mix and you have to, shift and adjust and all of that. So like I said, I always say give yourself some space and some grace, take some extra rest, keep your schedule a little bit lighter if you can. Because these are lunations. So the moon is our emotions. So emotions and sensitivity is heightened at these times also, you know. Um, yes.
And April and July stick out to you a little bit more. Why?
That's kind of complicated, and that would put us into like a whole other
Is that
hour.
like the whole, I was gonna say, is that like the next episode? Okay, so then how about a little bit of a teaser for April?
April. Well, we'll have by then we'll have all of the outer planets in their new territory, and kind of communicating with each other. Like I said, just weaving this whole new tapestry for this new paradigm. This is like new ways of thinking, new ways of communicating, new ways of travel and transportation. Probably see things with social media platforms, AI, with Pluto and Aquarius. He's already there now. Um, and for the next 20 years, it's really kind of sort of setting the stage and setting the backdrop of the next 2 decades. Aquarius is about technology. Pluto is about transformation, regeneration, even control. So I think we do have to be mindful always. Um, and all year, and this can be said, and I've said this a bunch over the last several years, particularly, we have to be mindful about the things that we pay attention to, that we give our energy to. Our energy is our currency, realistically. what we participate in, what we consent to, all of those things do matter. Like we can't just go through life anymore like duh, 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 duh. Well, this is the way it is, and my head's down and I'm just moving forward because I gotta work and pay bills. Like, are we NPCs? No. You know what I mean? Like we have to be mindful about these things because what we choose to participate in, what we choose to give our attention to is what we're creating in this new paradigm. So we have like a role and purpose and responsibility on a spiritual level in this. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the word that sticks out is the responsibility. And I think there's going to be some people kind of like that childish energy in a way that's going to fight and, not want to go in for bed at night, like that type of energy. Like, I don't want to do this. And you're going to have the other people who are going to have the curiosity and they're going to feel ready to step up into that responsibility.
And I think those are the people that have been working on this for a long time. And like you said, there's going to be some rebellion. I mean, and we really don't know. I think God's the only one that knows at this point what is coming down the road. We can try to put the pieces together and figure this out, but at the end of the day, we really don't know, how big this shakeup is going to be, how much it's going to affect our, the United States or the world. What's going to happen?
It is the whole world. It is the whole world. And I feel like, we've learned, in particular in the last decade or so, like the world really is connected, and we see all these different changes. It's not just here, it is all of us all over the world. So we can see, our connections, of humanity. Um, One of the things I wanted to say though is because I know there is a lot of talk of this and so it should be stated, when we've had Pluto in Aquarius before, like I said, we had the American Revolution, we had the French Revolution, so there was fighting, war, that kind of a thing. Same thing with when we had Neptune in Aries the last time. I believe that was the American Civil War. And I think when we had Uranus in Gemini the last time, that was World War II, 84 years ago. So we have a lot of these energies that are newly into these spots. So there's a lot of talk, in certain circles, war, 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 war. And I don't think that it's inevitable necessarily. But what I do think, honestly, excuse me, we're already in it. There's already been a war going on, and it's just more of it's sort of like under wraps, underground, but right under your nose, undetected. And it's psychological and it's spiritual and it's informational, and you know what I mean? So it's on all these other levels that are maybe not conventional or kinetic necessarily, you know? So I think that's important to recognize as well. And I also do think that perhaps that what has been going on under the surface begins to become more evident.
Yeah, kind of like you were saying in the last episode, the shadows are coming up to the surface and coming up to be released with,
Yeah, and I
more
really
light
feel
coming
like
in.
there is more light coming onto this planet. And I feel like all the darkness that we see is the evidence of it.
Mhm.
It's not because things are getting worse. They're getting uncovered,
Yeah, they're getting
you
exposed.
know?
Right.
the light is shining in the darkest places
Mm-hmm.
for everybody to see because it will no longer be able to exist in this frequency and this bandwidth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you can see that more and more. And when you understand the energies and really what's taking place right now, it's not just black and white. Like there's so many layers to this. And I think it's really pushing humanity to take a stance and where do you want to be in all of this? Where do you want to stand? What do you want to do with your world that you live in after it's, after the destruction of it? Where do you want to start building? What are your intentions with all of this? So I think there's just some pretty hardcore questions that, we're going to have to think about
You were
collectively.
definitely at a threshold moment,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But again, like I'm not a doomer. I see so much positive. And that's why I wanted to bring up all those for the last time we've had those transits, it seemed to be, there was some major conflict at each of them. And now we have all of them together at once. So it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, this is a bit of a nail biter,
Mm.
but at the same time, I feel like we're also spiraling up and evolving to another level too. At least I feel like there's enough of us over the last, I want to say since like 2012-ish, that have like sort of come online.
Mhm.
And I was given the image years ago of Christmas tree lights, strands of lights, how one bulb can control the whole strand. So I feel like there's enough of us bulbs lighting up these other strands of the grid, where we have gotten to enough of a higher frequency, where hopefully these wouldn't be these devastating worldwide conflicts. And like I said, in my opinion, personally, I feel like we're already at war. We've already been at war. It's been right under your nose if your open eye can see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you just weren't aware of it until now. So again, I think the time has come where humanity is really going to need to decide, what do you want with this? Where do you want to be? Like we're going to have to really make some decisions here. We're going
And
to
I
do
feel
this
like we're kind
together.
of, evolving enough and stepping into this new paradigm and stepping into our real birthright,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, we were talking about the DNA before this episode and how we've always been told there's this junk DNA and there's a huge percentage of it and it just doesn't mean anything. And really, um, I think I even saw like a research paper recently or say like last year or something where it's even like they're disproving that now. Like they know that there's more to our DNA, there's more to us. And even so, if science isn't going to release that info, for some of us, we have that feeling inside of us that something is like upgrading here, like
Mm-hmm.
something is just not the same, and it's in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
yeah, I
hopefully
feel like it was sort
we
of
sustain it.
unplugged, and now it's all being plugged back in and coming online. Because even again, as a younger person or kid or whatever, when I heard that, like, oh, you have all this junk DNA, and and I'm like, why would that be? That doesn't make any sense. It never made sense to me. Like, why would
Yeah,
we be created with that only for it to be like not useful?
this
That doesn't make
intelligence
sense.
just carrying around like a
Yeah.
trash bag
Yeah.
through its whole entire lifetime. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make sense, like you said.
No. And have you ever seen the I think it might be Greg Braden when he talked about when they decoded the numerical sequence of DNA, decoded it, changed it to the numerical value to a letter, and then it spelled out God eternal within the body.
Mm.
Have you
Mhm.
ever
No,
seen that
I don't
one?
think I have.
Oh my God, I was like, so amazing. So
Mhm.
That is
amazing.
cool. That
He
is
is an
And
really
it
interesting
just
cool.
shows
person
like
to talk
we
to too.
are, what's that?
He's a very interesting person to talk to. I was fortunate enough to meet him years ago. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
I'm gonna
very
have to look that
interesting.
up.
Yes, research. Hmm.
Yeah. And so you think about it, right? Because we are these powerful creator beings who have been sort of like subjugated and subdued
Hmm.
because
By
they,
design, by design.
by design, yes, and I'll leave it at that.
Mhm. Yes.
And I feel like that time is coming to an end.
Hmm.
And so, the
Hallelujah.
owners and controllers aren't just going to give up.
Hmm.
If you cornered a rat, it'd probably spring out and attack you,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anything caged and feels threatened, of course, that's just the nature of the beast is to
Hmm.
attack, to protect its stance on where it's at. So yes, it's going to be very interesting the next couple of years.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and even in the next couple of days. So with that being said, you obviously when you're out and about, you want to be mindful of your surroundings, you
Mhm.
know, because it's an edgy kind of an energy, people will be on edge. They might be
Mhm.
explosive. They might be, their nervous systems might be frazzled for what,
Mhm. Mhm.
So, maybe they're ready to pick a fight while you're in traffic or in the grocery store. And, you
Mhm.
just be mindful of your surroundings and even of your own temperament and energy and everything. We're not above it necessarily. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So it could be
Right.
like,
Yeah,
oh, before I
absolutely.
explode on somebody, let me just take a breath, count to
Right.
10, walk
Right.
away,
Yeah. And
you
you're better
know.
off doing that too. I mean, for your own peace of mind. And, don't,
Yeah.
again, this is where the self care comes in. It's so important right now to really focus on yourself and maybe unplug for a little bit. There's,
Mhm.
we don't need to put ourselves in situations like that if it's going to affect us in a negative way. So it's okay. Like take some downtime. Take some time for yourself. And I was even thinking about getting a massage because I'm like, why not? My body could probably use it. I know how much I enjoy it. So yeah, it's those little gifts that we give ourselves. It's very important too to be mindful of your body and your mind and where you are in all of this. What is your role, and are you taking care of yourself while you're moving through these changes and these shifts?
One of the other things when you just said self-care, because massages are great and bubble baths are, whatever. But also, self-care is also like standing up for ourselves, having boundaries. I want to say that with Saturn and Aries. It's kind of like these new boundaries, for anybody on a personal level, or you could see it actually even on a physical level, maps and things, but that's another story. But new boundaries, enforcing them, new rules of engagement, with people's behavior and things like that. Like, no, that is not acceptable. And you've crossed my boundary, and I'm letting you know that. That is
Right.
self care, also.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And I think
100%.
very important too with what's going on right now. Very important.
Especially if you're used to shutting down, you
Or
know?
giving in.
Yep, or giving in or people pleasing or all of that.
Mhm.
Like to really start to shift out of that. And like you said, just that self care to say no. back up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like
You
that is
know?
self-care, and I feel like it's not mentioned enough,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know? And Saturn in Aries is not a people pleaser. This is very much about like sovereignty and
Mhm.
personal authority,
Mhm.
and I'm going to lead myself. I'm going to be my own boss,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then add Neptune to the mix. This is like following my own intuition, my own inner calling.
Mhm.
Forget the noise out here.
Mhm.
I'm not listening to all that and all these different disruptions. And I'm focusing on my goals, where my heart leads,
Cool.
my role, my purpose. It's a little bit of a selfish energy with Saturn and
Mhm.
Aries.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's very like
but a good
sort of like
one for sure.
self-contained.
Yeah, and it's
What's that?
necessary.
I said a good one though,
Mhm.
you know?
I
Like
mean,
Yeah,
if it,
and this is all like in the next 2.5 years, while Saturn's in Aries, on the collective, this is all about new foundations, new buildings, new structures, new systems.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you could take that to your personal life, how you run your day-to-day life. If you have a business, how you run your business, your systems, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different ways. Astrology is um, able to be applied on several levels simultaneously.
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The macrocosm, the microcosm, we are our own little universe inside
Yeah.
ourselves. So absolutely. It sounds like, and it's interesting too, because as we were saying in the other episode, we talked about the natural alignment of the original calendar and how that got changed centuries ago and kind of brings the human out of that natural alignment. But with this energy and us moving into springtime here in the US, it's that time where we naturally already start to like clean house and get rid of things and all of that, and it's just aligning with what's now you know brewing in the universe. So
But yeah, like
I
I
love
said,
that when things sync up like that.
looking at the way things look here now, and I mean, I live in the woods, whatever. It's frozen. I mean, it's a little thawing out the last day or so, because we made it like, a notch above freezing. But and it made me think, like with the snake, that last couple of weeks of the snake year, like, yeah, it's just that hibernation, going within type of phase. It isn't, we're not ready to step out there. So when I'm hearing people, because like I said, we're humans, we have our own tick, 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 time, I need to do this. I have this agenda. I have this schedule. But it's not really time to take off yet, but
Mhm.
it will be. It's not long now,
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and then
And
absolutely.
yeah, and I
April is
agree.
we have spring, in April,
Hmm.
so and everything starts to bloom, and
Right.
you see all the preparation, probably like in March. I mean, even the birds. If you watch the birds, they know what they need to do in the different seasons and how they're starting to prep now for what's to come in the spring. And also, it's like maybe moving out of the deep hibernation and moving into more of the cleaning up and preparing the house now and getting it
Mm-hmm.
ready for this new energy to come in.
It's also trusting what you don't say. So, like, there's, excuse me, like there's the grass underneath the snow. And, like, and beneath that, then there's this whole network of roots and things communicating to each other. And so it's like just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that goes back to not being so doom and gloom and afraid of just because of what our eyes are saying. There's that whole other layer of what's happening under
Mm-hmm.
the surface.
And I find, when it's too much, it's too overwhelming or whatever. And I love just being out in nature, and I'm so blessed um to be, be immersed in it, really. And it's taught me so much over the years, just as an astrologer, to watch the cycles unfold, to watch the animals, how they behave on a full moon or something,
Mm-hmm.
because I will take some cues from the animal symbolism, and I'll see like who shows up, and
Mm-hmm.
because it's not the same every day, it's not the same all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how these natural cycles unfold, and you're like, yeah, these ancient people, these ancient civilizations that followed, the wheel of the year, or that perhaps built monuments in alignment with the stars and stuff. I have a hard time really believing that we're really more advanced than them. I don't think
Yeah.
so. Or that they were so primitive. They didn't know
Mm-hmm.
anything. I'm like, I think they actually did. I think they knew a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do too.
absolutely. And hopefully, as things get revealed, we learn even more about that from, books and things that we know are kept from us, and even more, like that's a whole nother episode. But,
Mm-hmm.
I think we will. I do.
I
I believe that we
definitely
will.
hope so.
I think we're writing the books now. That's what I
I
think.
feel
That's what
like
I
we're
feel.
in just the beginning stages. Like, I think I may have mentioned this on the last episode, but I've said it before. Like, we're like the ancestors of this
Mhm.
new earth paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
So we are like laying the foundations. So again, I'm not doom and gloom. I'm not attached to things that imprison us and hold us down, and, are harmful to us even, you know. See you, bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Next.
Next, well, I think that's the right words to kind of lead us out of the episode. Next, we'll have another conversation about the energies that we move into later on in the spring season, hopefully closer to summer, and we'll all get to kind of share how this eclipse went. I'll be super
Mm-hmm.
curious to hear from you
Sure.
ladies about how that has gone for you, and I'll definitely share my travels and things of that nature, and we'll keep an eye on what's happening on world events and see the transformations that are going to happen more and more of.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you coming on again with us, Christina.
I do too.
um
Thank you.
if you want to
Yeah.
remind
Thanks so much for having me.
everyone.
It's always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to remind everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, on my website, you can find me at lunarlivingcoaching.com or newearthharmonycenter.com. You can read my blog and sign up to it for free. My lunar forecast is Tales of Lunacy, and that you can find that on my website. And some
Perfect.
other things
Yeah.
too. I also have, let me just plug this. I
Go
also
for
have, to celebrate, I guess, or to commemorate Saturn moving into Aries, I have a free little challenge. It's just through email. It's nothing physical or anything, but this is all about like owning your authority. It's called Badassery, and you can also sign up for that for
Love
free.
it.
That's awesome.
And what does that entail? What's the
It's
challenge?
just like kind of like these little like email espresso shots, basically, of like some journaling, some shadow work, but like just to help you to step into your own power, put
Mm.
fear behind you, do things that are sort of out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Mm. Interesting. I love that.
Yeah. Everybody needs to find their own badass version of themselves.
Yeah. And Saturn and Aries is the perfect time for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well,
Perfect.
I know we'll stay in touch. Um, but I think it, like Laura said, it'll be very interesting to have you back on in a couple of months and to see where we are at that time and maybe where you think the energy is headed at that point.
I think we're going to have a lot to talk about. We always have a lot to talk about.
We do.
Yes.
All right,
ladies.
ladies.
All right.
Thank
well,
you
Thanks
so
again,
much.
Christina.
Yep. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Sleeping Lotus podcast. If you can, please like, subscribe, and share. That helps us out tremendously. And tune in to next week for a new episode. All right, everybody. Thank you again for listening. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.